Good evening, July 27th, 2023, Mary Conley in Jacksonville. I went on to Nextdoor trying to hit all areas of town, and I asked if anybody had any recollection of the 36 hours Bundy was here in 78 and any other recollections they had of Bundy, because that way, rather than just hitting the west side, theoretically, I hit other communities. In the 60s and 70s, a lot of people that lived on the west side, as they reached maturity, moved to the south side to be closer to the beaches and the golf courses and upward mobile, out of the west side and off to the San Marco and south side. So I put it in there and I said, if anybody knows of any uh, Evangel Temple, Gator Lodge, Roller Derm, Green Acres, any kind of remembrance. So I put that on there, and I wrote it quite eloquently. I must say so myself. So I put it on there, and then some guy, didn't you do this a few years ago? So you have the detractors. And I said, yes, but I'm trying to hit all areas of the town. So, I was trying to push him to the wayside. And then a girl wrote, and her name was Chris Carpenter. If you remember, in June, I went to the courthouse. My incidents at the Chamberlain Book Mine several years ago, I bought Anne Rule, supposedly her last edition of The Stranger Beside Me, because I really wanted to read those last chapters where she had amended the book. And I think it was 2015 she passed, but this might have been 2009, the book. I don't know what year it was, several years ago. And I was checking out, and there were people in a line. It must have been a Saturday. And the girl saw the book, and she looked like Harry Potter or Tina Fey with glasses. And she says, my mom met Ted Bundy when she was a child. And I said, really? And she said, yes. My mom was a child at the Gator Inn. My grandparents owned the Gator Inn. I said, on Phillips? And she said, yes, out, in San Marco. And I said, oh, wow. But I had to move on because there was a line behind me. And I didn't think much of it. So it was a spontaneous verbal declaration that her mother, as a child, saw Ted Bundy and that her grandparents owned the Gator Inn. So I did research, and there was a couple articles on it. Jack Psycho and Mark Woods, Times Union reporter, had met with her and talked about the old Gator Lodge. They didn't talk about Ted Bundy, but they talked about the Gator Lodge, and there was a dining hall and everything. Now, the father, Sam King and Susan King, built this place in the 1959 through 61, something like that, and it was finally completed. And Linda King was born in 1961, and apparently her sister was born quite quickly, like 1962, Lisa. Now, I don't know who the daughter was, either the daughter of Lisa or Linda. I don't know which one was her mother, but her mother met him when she was a child. So I put this thing on Nextdoor, and a girl named Chris, Crys, Carpenter, in Cedar Hills, where Debbie and I grew up, said, yes, I've been trying for years to show that he was at Gator Inn. And I'm thinking, what? She said all the paperwork's gone. But see, what she doesn't know is the family is still living and they remembered him. Well, anyway, Sam King, whose name was really Salvatore Tominski, or Tomasco, or it was either Italian or Greek or something, passed away in 1972. And Susan King, the owner or wife, sold the entire property in 1974. So that put Bundy here before 74, probably before 72 even. Anyway, I wrote Chris Carpenter, and she said, yes. My mom, who passed away last October, told me, and they were apparently from Cedar Hills. She said she knew someone that stayed with Bundy at Gator Inn. Okay. Now, and she said, I don't know if it's a lover or friend. So, again, Debbie, Vicky, and Jeannie. Now, my feeling is Mrs. Ho, Debbie's mom, was a maitre d' at the heart of Jacksonville and played the organ. She was an entertainer maitre d'. She moonlighted at the Mayport Naval Station and played the organ. Since this Gator Inn was a big political facility, the right wing, the left wing, the consolidators, and they all met there in that dining hall, and a lot of politicians would go there for lunch because they had a steak restaurant or something. They had a really nice restaurant and a dining hall, and they would go there. And I just wondered if she moonlighted there. All I know is Ted Bundy had a relationship with somebody in Jacksonville prior to 78. It may go back as far as 68. And again, Debbie and I met him in 67, and I know because of the pedal pushers that I was wearing. I have photographs of me in that summer, and also every reference to him in my little diary of the thumbing a ride and running away and all the stuff I wrote, which wasn't true because I tried to camouflage it from my mom. The part that was ripped out, you can't read. It says bright red, Theodore Bundy, and talking to. That's all I can make out of it because remember, the page was ripped out because Debbie insisted on me ripping it out. But anyway, this Chris Carpenter is an affirmation. That's two sources that placed Bundy at the Gator Lodge. Can somebody please check this out? I know it doesn't seem to make any sense to anybody, but the period from the late summer of 67 and possibly the fall of 69, I think the 20-year-old and a half, crazy as hell person may have had an affair here in Jacksonville and produced a child. And I think it's important because if he came to and from and always treated them as a, okay, there was another lady that wrote, I'm going to go back onto my next door. And she says, during that crazy weekend in 78 when he was trolling in Jacksonville, she was hungry and decided to go to the grocery store. And now there's I think like an Arby's and a Walgreens. And it's right across from where my parents are buried at the Memorial Park. It's called Normandy and Memorial Park. And there was a grocery store there. Now I think it's like it might be a fast food restaurant and a CVS or Walgreens. I can't remember. I think it's a Walgreens. Anyway, it used to be a grocery store there. And she went there and she said there was a dirty white van. Now, a white van is pretty common, right? But this is during that weekend. And she said it was dark and the parking lot was not well lit. And she said the van door, the back door, was open. Of the two, one of the back doors of the van was open and it was dirty. She could tell it was dirty. Now, George Deckel said for some reason that van was dirty. Most white vans are not dirty. This one, for some reason, and a media van wouldn't be dirty either. So you steal a media van from Tallahassee, it's not dirty. He had driven at some places that made it dirty, like wooded areas or mud. For some reason, it was dirty. So she said something gave her the creeps. So she said in order to get to her car, she would have had to walk by that open back door. And she said the way it was, she couldn't get to her driver's door without going by that open van rear door. So she said all she could think to do was to kick it with her foot. So she kicked it shut, got in her car, and hightailed it out of there. So I wrote her back, and I think her name was Bethany Smith or something. And I said, without being nosy, can you tell me what kind of car you had? She had a Oldsmobile that was red and white. So like an Oldsmobile Cutlass, red and white. And she said she was slender and had long hair. I will show you the emails, the next door. That creeps me out a little bit. It's just something about it being next to the cemetery. Normandy is where Green Acres is. And it was dark, and he left the back door van open. Oh, my God, So that's a possibility. It's remote, but if it was that weekend, it's kind of creepy. Okay, so this is what we've come up with now. I get more stuff from next door than anything else, but I wanted to put this on here. I'm waiting to hear from Chris Carpenter. She's going to talk to her sister. She says, it was my understanding that he was meeting somebody at Gator Inn that was a friend or lover. Okay. So there you go. That's two sources, two separate individual sources, the owner's granddaughter and somebody from Cedar Hills. It's close. And I'm sorry if it steps on toes. Well, we're protecting this person because she had an affair and a baby out of... I don't care. I think the world should know if he was coming to and from Jacksonville. I think the world should know if he was trying to recreate the ride in 1967. By the way, Carol DeRoche was a maroon Camaro, and his ex-girlfriend in California drove a red Mustang. So maybe a red and white Cutlass might have drawn his eyes. Thank you.